running and passing time. Keeps running and passing and running. Running. Time is passing. Time is running. Passing. Time is running. Time is running. Time is passing. You better hurry. Time is running. It's running. It's running. It's running. 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 It's running.
What's good? What's good, world? What's good?
Welcome to the show, Mystery Go and the Feral Monk coming at you with a new podcast. We're trying to wrap up our previous episode on time, and unfortunately, our compadre, Mr. Cassiano, is not going to be able to join us today, but he sends his regards and has asked that we read a poem. Try to get him to record it and send it in, but that we haven't ironed that technology out yet. So forgive us. But yeah, I'll start off. It's a poem by, I think it's Octavio Paz. So it's a long one, and we're just gonna read like an excerpt from it, like the first page. But I definitely encourage you guys to check it out. It's totally relevant on the subject that we've been talking about, and quite beautiful as well. So here goes. Identical time or same time. It is not the wind, not the steps of the water sleepwalking past the petrified houses and the trees far from the reddish night. It is not the sea climbing the stairs. Everything is still. The natural world is at rest. It is the city turning on its shadow, searching, always searching itself, lost in its immensity, never catching up, never able to leave itself. I close my eyes and watch the cars go by. They flare up and burn out and flare up, burn out. I don't know where they're going, all of us going to die. What else do we know? On a bench, an old man talks to himself. To whom do we talk, talking to ourselves? He's forgotten his past. He will not reach the future. He doesn't know who he is, alive in the middle of the night, talking to hear himself. Deep stuff indeed. I don't know much about Mr. Paz, but I'll have to look into it some more. I hate that Eric's not here to join us on that, but appreciate the shout out, Eric, and the recommendation for sure. Mr. Monk, would you like to kind of catch us up to speed and do me a favor and recapping us a little bit on where we stand right now on our conversation with time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Briefly.
Just took like just wrote down a few notes so that I don't, really miss things that were important. But in the last podcast, basically, we were talking very broadly about time. So we were talking about, I would say mostly the different possible expressions or ways of experiencing time. So for example, we touched on time being inextricably linked with space. and which basically makes it also an aspect of our physical dimension that we can't really get away from. Eric talked and kept coming back to body time a lot, and as he said, it probably makes up about 90% of the human experience of time is oriented towards the body. Appointments and dinner and breakfast and the circadian rhythm of sleeping and waking, and so but it also tends to express itself in numerous other ways. We touched on also just that time is also expressed as movement, especially with regards to distance. I mean, that's basically in space-time, moving through those distances, is an expression of time. Because of movement, you come very quickly to the movement of clocks, or the rhythm, even the rhythm of the heart beating inside of your chest, which he also touched on a lot about aging. The ticking reminder of the clock, the time expresses itself, basically as some type of physical chronology. You alluded to the arrow of time, the concept of the arrow of time not being able to uncrack a cracked egg, and expresses itself in entropy, and because of like all these considerations that we touched on, and just the sheer broadness of the topic of time, with the question of what is time. I mean, that was basically what we were talking about. We were basically pondering and speculating on what all time could be. I was thinking it's possible that maybe an appropriate way to sort of refine this very broad topic, or to continue talking about time, is if it's not more appropriate to think of time as like the multifaceted measurement of life, in the sense that the physical nature is one that's based around change. Things are decaying and being born and transforming, and all of that kind of movement is basically change. Rhythm is change, the clock is change, aging is change. All of those things, to me at least, seem to like sort of express basically that physical time is change. To extend that into the mental time, as Eric had broken it up into 3 different categories of body time, mental time, and soul time. The mental time then maybe would be more appropriate to think of it as sort of a cataloging of these observed physical changes over the courses of one's life. And so mental time then is heavily based on memory. And even to a certain degree, the projections that we can make about the future are based off of some type of probability that we've calculated about the past. And even our imaginations and things, I think it was Jiddu Krishnamurti that touched on, even our fantasies and our imaginations tend not to be completely new things, but more new combinations of things that we've already experienced, so that we tend to mentally draw on the past for it, the basis of basically all thinking.
Yes.
And so that, that still leaves us with the soul time. And there, I think we were all pretty much in agreement, at least from our own opinions. I mean, this is, once we get into this realm, it's really speculation. It's really has to do with being able to admit right from the beginning that you know nothing with any type of absolute certainty, but you're open and interested in the exploration. And the more you can remain in that sort of open, explorative state when looking at the perspective of time. Maybe the closer you can get to like almost some sense of what timelessness might be, without it necessarily being something that was created by your thought, you know. So that was sort of like the basic recap of those three types of time that we were talking about before, where we had a huge, broad and wide discussion about what time could look like, how it expresses itself, what it could possibly be. And I think in the end, what we're really talking about is human time. And
our version of it.
Yeah. And because we're talking about human time, we're basically talking about physical changes, mental time, the cataloging of those physical changes over the course of one's life, and then the soul's time, which is a much more explorative and speculative realm. So I think that kind of points towards, as you said in the first episode, the relativity of time, and that time is basically something that has to do with perception. And so I was wondering if you would like to, maybe today we could explore that aspect of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that, it's interesting and important to note, like you said, a lot of this depends on like where we're coming from, and that's what I mean by the perception, and how we perceive time is going to just as we perceive everything in life is going to determine a lot of the outcome, and determine a lot of how just we interpret time as far as it affects us. And that goes to just everyday routines, like we spoke about and touched on in the first one. So yeah, it's a deep interesting topic that like it's hard to encompass and encapsulate into words, because it seems like the more that we do that, the less it makes sense, or but important, I think, to underline is to come at it with this openness, and from this place of kind of accepting, maybe accepting a perspective, or shifting your perspective to see it a different way, and so that maybe we can possibly make time less of an enemy, and more of a friend. I don't know, just speaking for myself, I know that I've been a slave to time, and it it creates anxiety, and it's been a beast that I carry around, and I'm working on, and will continue to work on, but yeah, so I think that's where I'm at with the whole perception, trying to come at it with an openness, so that we can learn from time some, and from ourselves.
Yeah, I was also interested in like sort of the links to the experience of time and the nature of individual perception. So what found interesting, speaking with Eric last time, was he brought it back quite often to the agenda, the daily agenda, the things that you have to keep up with. The kids have to be ready by a certain time, they have to be at school by a certain time, you have to be at work, you have meetings, you have obligations, and that does cause anxiety, and it causes quite a level of stress. And in that conversation, and then I don't want to like assume anything at all, but my sense of, and Eric is, please correct me if I'm misapprehending what you were meaning by that, but I sort of took it in a way of when he was talking about, well, I can't just sit here and contemplate, because I need to I need to keep up with all of these physical demands of the clock and
Right.
and appointments. And I was thinking of exactly how often we think about that. Like, is contemplating something that is going to help us in any way in our physical life. I mean, whenever a person goes to a meditation retreat, or goes to take yoga classes, or seeks out any of these different types of techniques, then there's a reason behind why they're seeking out these techniques, and it's usually because they have some type of anxiety or stress as a result of their daily life and their interactions and relationships and
Yeah.
economy and all of the modern basic survival things.
Yeah.
And so it and when you're sort of locked into, and I don't mean Eric in this sense, I'm generally like all of us,
Yes.
when you're locked into um, chasing after all of those demands and those appointments and those time constrictions, it's also very difficult then to imagine how something like that could be beneficial. And so I wanted to offer for anyone in the audience maybe my personal reason of why uh, I feel like contemplation and these types of things haven't been just navel gazing or unfruitful. They've actually been very fruitful, and in a very basic way. Those same anxieties and stresses of the clock, I've noticed that over the years of contemplating myself in the deepest sense of where am I looking from at a primary point of my experience, um, has also sort of prioritized other things in my life in a very natural way. As like I've progressed further and accumulated more time in those practices, um, there has developed a certain amount of patience, a certain amount of calm, a certain amount of clarity, a certain amount of equanimity,
Yeah. And
um,
presence,
and presence,
being present in the moment.
and attention and consideration, and a lot of things that have naturally come out of those. And now, whenever I see um, myself from time to time or others stressing about certain things, a lot of times the stress now wakes me back into that understanding, instead of being what would have been maybe some, towards the beginning of the journey, or even at times in between, a day where you brood over some terrible experience that happened in the morning. Somebody honked at you or gave you the finger or whatever in traffic, or just something stupid. You made yourself a bowl of cereal and it fell on the floor and broke everywhere, and you're going to be late, and that kind of
Something to fuck up then.
yeah. And so in those particular moments, that established priority list that's gotten stronger and stronger over time now allows for the space to okay, that just happened. Now that happened, and now I'm going to clean that up. And then whenever I get to work, I'm going to be 5 minutes late, and everyone's going to deal with it, and probably no one will even say anything, and it doesn't really matter. And
Right, it's gonna go on.
and it allows not a carelessness, actually quite the opposite.
Mhm.
It's not like an excuse search, or it's just a truly transformational, personal, inner reprioritizing of where values really lie in life, and where happiness blossoms easiest, or something like that. you know
Yeah, it's
um,
what I mean. I've been working on, and you know, and like in therapy and stuff, is the acceptance commitment therapy, and just gaining like an acceptance of things as they are, and not trying to control everything, right? And
yeah.
yeah, and by doing so, yeah, time is much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does mean a lot to me, though, kind of like you said. It's contrary to like the whole navel gazing. Everything seems to become more purposeful, and so your time is more precious to a degree, but you don't just seem so uptight about it, or I don't,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've definitely noticed I mean, I had a terrible temper whenever I was really young, and I've gotten to quite a good point. I can still get cooking inside, and usually over injustices, I can get quite angry.
Mm-hmm.
But it has I've developed an ability, and I credit meditation to that, of being able to remain centered even in the middle of that fire, in the middle of that rush of emotion and stress and all of those things, to let it pass over me and let it go, and not super get down on myself for um having lost my center, or having
Right. Yeah.
overreacted to something, or
Right.
you know
Allowing yourself the space to have those emotions, and
yeah.
just
And I
not
think a part of that is not
so
only like getting over and being able to relax through the physical stress of time's demands, but then also being able to see through the mental acrobatics that also cause stress and anxiety, by overthinking about all of those deadlines and about the stress that's going to happen from those deadlines. And sort of like you get in this circle where you're trapped in this very stressful
cycle.
um experience.
Yes. And
And
comes the
whenever you tie back into perception is enabling us the experience, like if you think of it's very Buddhist, but it doesn't matter. It's just a really good way of describing it. If you think about it, you have some type of stimulus, either an inner stimulus, or an external stimulus. That stimulus creates some type of sensation, whether it's like a bodily sensation or a mental sensation, whether it's an emotion or whatever.
right.
And uh, upon that sensation, there's a moment of perception of those things. And that perception then afterwards tends, most of the time, for most people, to go straight into reaction patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the brain operating out of accumulated past experiences, that cataloging of change from one's lifetime, and it's reacting out of that store of information that it has as memory. And it's acting uh, sometimes faster than the consciousness and awareness can become aware of it and stop it. It has a momentum of its own that's been going on for years. And I mean, we all know about habits and about things like that you can get into ruts and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
but yeah, so then that perception over time is less and less able to be clean in its apprehension of what was. So it becomes colored, like it becomes, through each passing year, each accumulation of experience, each new opinion, each new information that's come into the store of the mind. It's becoming it's getting more and more colored, and you have society and media and television and popular culture, and you have your traditional cultures and religions and philosophies. I mean, just think about the diversity of our planet, and the different ways of human expression, the different what the probably 8 billion different 8 billion people. There's probably 8 billion different experiences of the world, you know
Yep.
in at least some sense. And yet they all have like these sort of common attributes of, there comes the stimulus and the sensation and the perception, and then rolls off into reaction land and starts supporting that whole vicious cycle that
Mm-hmm.
keeps you feeling like you're trapped in a stressful, physical, time bound world. And if you choose to stop and go explore that third part of timelessness that we were talking about, then R2D2, baby.
All right, wifey.
But yeah, you can get to a point where it's not detachment and it's not indifference. to those physical stresses and mental stresses, and to even thinking in general or living in a physical life. It's not that you somehow detach from that or you're indifferent to it.
There's
you
a
get
middle
to a
ground.
point of stable equanimity where you experience everything to its fullest intensity, but you're not swept away with it. And
Exactly.
so that for me is sort of like the value of exploring contemplation and that aspect of human aspect of time, or timelessness, and why it can be beneficial to spend some time doing that. And on that note, actually, because we were talking about my boy Tion before we started.
Yeah.
I was gonna read something that he wrote quite a while ago, and it's very poignant. I mean, he was a watch designer, so he would have loved to participated in these conversations, the last two conversations. So anyway, I'm going to read a little excerpt also from his book, since we're reading today.
Perfect. That sounds just right on time.
So Zeitgeist, to the very second. What distinguishes our culture today is the development of an ever more precise sense of time and a tendency to organize our whole lives on an exact schedule. The clock as a time machine has become a divisive machine in our civilization. The clock dictates the time and not the reverse. We no longer eat just when we're hungry or when we have the time or inclination. We eat at 8 a.m. on the dot, and at 12 noon, and at 7 p.m. Already in ancient times, already in ancient Rome, Plautus made the hero in his comedy complain, "May the gods bring him to ruin who invented the hour and added the sundial to which pulls my day to pieces. Once my belly was my clock and was the best of all." Suddenly, time exerts pressure. We live constantly pressed for time. We are continually short of time, and one of the features of the modern elite seems to be a lack of time as a matter of principle. Stress and permanent strain have long been a status symbol. Originally, man wanted to capture time with the clock. Today, we are its prisoners. Time for oneself and for others has become a luxury. With each faster hand, time seems to pass more quickly. It moves slowly with the hour hand. With the minute hand invented in 1675, its progress can just be seen. And with the second hand, which has been ceaselessly revolving since 1720, time seems to fly. Tempus fugit was engraved on the first clocks with second hands. The tempo of the hands is not the tempo of time. However, it is here that we seem to be confused. In the 18th century, from an England obsessed by sport, Voltaire told of stopwatches which measured time in seconds. Today, we measure to the hundredth of a second in sport, and in science to incomprehensible fractions. The less one looks at a clock, though, the easier it is to relax. The urge to go south on vacations is not by chance. We look forward to the sunshine and the relaxed, timeless way of life of the South. For once, we are happy to enjoy the moment and forget time altogether. And you know that it goes on for a little while, but he's a wonderful man. I would love to have had him in here, but at least now he was kind of here with us. So
Absolutely, it's beautiful.
but
Thank you for
but it,
sharing that.
you
Yes.
know, and it fits to what we were talking about too. You know, like that's actually the problem with time, is that we get stressed by it.
Yeah, we
And
become
if
prisoners to it.
and maybe, you know, as we were like thinking out loud, you know,
Mhm.
together, maybe, you know, that yeah, no, I've lost. The thoughts left me. I lost it.
Cool. That's all
So
good.
yeah, it happens. More often than I would like.
You know,
Getting old
no
or
worries.
not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure EC laughed at that moment.
He can relate to.
uh, but
Yeah,
no, you know,
since we're just sharing today, you know, and reading things. I had something that I wanted to share and read that I think is relevant on the same topic, and it's by Mr. Aldous Huxley
Sweet.
from The Doors of Perception. And the quote goes, "The man who comes back through the door in the wall will never be quite the same as the man who went out. He will be wiser, but less sure, happier, but less self-satisfied, humbler in acknowledging his ignorance, yet better equipped to understand the relationship of words to things, of systematic reasoning to the unfathomable mystery which it tries forever vainly to comprehend."
Very nice.
Yes, yes.
That's very nice. Yeah. Yeah. But that's the fun, or for me personally, that's for me the most fun part of life, is that explorative, open, into the mystery go. It's like, where's the mystery? Show me the mystery. Where is it at? Let's go.
That's it.
There's
Having that, retaining that childlike curiosity and spontaneity, just trying and approaching things with that, I don't know. And,
Yeah.
I think
yeah.
one of my quotes that I've quoted myself too many times is saying, all I know is that I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
like, I don't know.
It's that is for sure like the first true utterance of wisdom in your, whenever you're like going through your life, there's like a moment where you realize like, oh, I actually don't know anything with certainty. Anything that I think that I know with certainty has become because someone else has told me, or because I've thought about it myself,
Right.
or I've interpreted one of my experiences as such. But being able to prove things absolutely is I don't think any scientist in the world would say they can prove anything absolutely. And and I think they also have that that attitude of, I'll propose hypotheses, I'll find ways to test them out, I'll collect whatever experience or data that I'm going to get from that, and I'll reflect on it, and I'll see if there's any conclusions that can be drawn out of it, and I'll continue to remain open to work with those working truths until something comes along and enlightens that subject or whatever further. Good point where we could
I know it's getting late there, and
yeah,
it's probably
we could
nighttime, but I think this is a good segue into the next episode.
yeah, I think it would be nice to delve a little bit more into the whole perception and
Yep. And we put a nice bookend on time, and of course we could devote an entire
season
season,
entire season of podcast to it.
I was gonna say an entire,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we must digress, and
yeah.
and we must ponder other things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope everyone's enjoyed themselves and got some food for thought for their brains to chew on in the meantime. Everybody be safe out there, take care of themselves. Mr. Monk, thanks for joining me. Mr. Cassiano,
yeah, thanks for having me.
Always. Mr. Cassiano, sorry you couldn't make it, bud, but we'll catch up again soon. You're welcome back anytime. One love.
Yeah, man. One
All
love,
right.
and into the mystery we go again.
Absolutely. Peace.
Peace.
As the doors of perception are closed, everything will appear to man as it is. Confront.